I want to take you back to a very specific moment in time. It is the fall of 2009. The location is Seoul, Korea.
Huh.
And if you have ever been to one of these high-level international banking conferences, you know exactly what this room feels like.
Oh, absolutely. It is a very specific vibe. The air conditioning is always set about 3 degrees too cold. The carpet is that generic hotel pattern designed to hide coffee stains. And the silence is just a heavy, expensive silence.
Right. It is a cavernous hall. The lighting is dim, focused entirely on the stage. And the room is packed wall to wall with what the author of our source material today calls suit and tie wearing hotshots.
Yeah, the masters of the universe.
Exactly. We are talking central bankers, hedge fund managers, institutional investors, the kind of people who move markets with a whisper.
It is a room where serious people go to discuss serious money. And there is a clear hierarchy here.
Yeah.
Everyone is polite. Everyone is highly deferential.
Very deferential. And at the very top of that hierarchy, standing right at the podium, is a man named Takatoshi Kato. Now, for those who don't know, Kato wasn't just some guy with a slideshow.
No, definitely not.
He was a high-ranking official, the deputy managing director of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. In this world, he is essentially a god of finance.
He is the authority. When he speaks, people don't just listen. They take notes. They adjust portfolios.
So Kato is standing there, and he is doing what people in his position do. He is running through a PowerPoint presentation, and he is confident. He has the laser pointer out. He has the charts, and he is presenting economic projections for the next 5 years.
And we really need to remember the date here. Fall of 2009.
Right.
The world is just barely dragging itself out of the wreckage of the 2008 financial crisis. The dust hasn't even remotely settled yet.
Which makes what he is doing even more audacious, because he is telling this room full of people exactly what the global economy is going to do in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. He isn't saying maybe. He has the numbers.
He has the decimals.
Yes, he has the growth rates calculated down to the fraction of a percent.
Standard operating procedure, though. I mean, this is what you pay an expert for.
Yeah.
You want the forecast. You want the map.
And most people in the room are just nodding along. They're buying it. Except for one person. The author of the material we are diving into today. He is sitting in the audience, and he describes a physical reaction that is not boredom, and it's not just polite disagreement. It is absolute rage.
He describes it as a blind, red rage.
He says he was so angry he nearly started shouting in French.
Which, if you know the author from the text, is a clear sign that things are about to go completely off the rails.
He effectively forgets he is in Korea. He forgets the Confucian decorum of the conference. He forgets that you just do not interrupt a deputy managing director of the IMF. He storms the podium.
Literally runs up.
Literally runs up there and interrupts the presentation.
It is a meltdown, a total meltdown in a room where people don't even sneeze loudly.
But see, he's not just screaming for the sake of screaming. He turns to the audience, these 2,000 polite, completely shocked Koreans, and he effectively yells, "Stop. Stop looking at his slides."
He challenges the entire premise of being there.
He does. He says, instead of looking at what this man is predicting for the future, why don't you ask him to show you what he predicted in the past?
That is the question that just sucks the air right out of the room.
He says, ask him what he forecasted for 2008 and 2009, the years of the massive financial crisis, back when he was standing on a stage in 2004, 2006.
And we all know the answer to that, don't we?
If Cato had actually shown those slides, what would they have looked like?
They would have shown a straight line going up and to the right. They would have predicted smooth sailing, steady growth, and stability right straight through the moment Lehman Brothers collapsed and the global economy melted down.
Exactly. And that is the core point the author was making in that moment of rage. The track record for these highly venerable experts in predicting significant, rare events, whether that's in politics or economics or social shifts, it isn't just low, it is zero.
Zero. Not bad. Not hit or miss. Non-existent.
And yet we keep going back to the conference, we keep taking notes, we keep hiring the Catos of the world to tell us what 2015 is going to look like.
Because we are utterly addicted to the illusion of prediction. And that scene, that moment of shouting in French at a PowerPoint screen, that sets the stage for everything we are talking about today.
So today we are going to explore a very uncomfortable truth. We are going to look at why we are so terrible at prediction, but more importantly, and I think this is where the deep dive really happens today, we are going to look at why trying to predict is actually dangerous. like physically and financially dangerous.
It is not just a waste of time. It is an active hazard.
And we aren't just going to tear down forecasting and leave you with nothing. We are going to look at the alternative. Because the author didn't just yell at the guy and leave. He improvised a solution right on the spot. He said, all I want is to live in a world in which predictions such as those by Mr. Cato do not harm you.
And that brings us to the triad, the shift from trying to predict the future to understanding three states of being: fragility, robustness, and anti-fragility.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think most people, when they hear a forecast, even if they are a little skeptical, they think, well, what is the harm? If the weatherman says it's going to rain and it doesn't, I just carried an umbrella for nothing. Big deal.
Right. It feels like a very low-cost error.
But the sources we have today suggest that in economics and social systems, forecasting is actually venomous. It is not neutral.
It is absolutely not neutral. The author uses a medical term here that I think is brilliant: iatrogenics.
Iatrogenics. That is quite a mouthful. Break that down for us.
It comes from the Greek. Iatros means healer, and genesis means origin. So iatrogenics literally means harm caused by the healer. It is when the doctor makes you sicker than the disease did.
Okay, that sounds like a malpractice suit waiting to happen. But give me a historical context here. Are we talking about a surgeon leaving a sponge inside a patient?
It is much more systemic than that. Think about the entire history of medicine. For roughly 2,000 years, if you went to a doctor, you were actually putting your life at risk more than if you had just stayed home and had some chicken soup.
2,000 years? That is a long time to be getting it entirely wrong.
Think about bloodletting. This is the classic example the text uses. Let's look at George Washington.
The first president.
Right. So he falls ill with a throat infection. A bad one, sure, but he is a strong guy. He survived wars. The best doctors of his time, the absolute experts, the Catos of 1799, they rush to his bedside. And what do they decide is the scientific thing to do?
They drain his blood.
They drain nearly half his blood volume in a single day. They were trying to kill him. They were desperately trying to save him. They genuinely believed that by balancing his humors, they were curing the infection. But instead, they weakened him to the point where his body couldn't fight, and he died.
So the intervention itself was the cause of death.
Exactly. That is iatrogenics. The urge to do something based on a deeply flawed model caused the ultimate harm.
And the argument here is that economic forecasting is the modern equivalent of bloodletting.
In many ways, yes, or snake oil. The argument is that forecasting isn't just passive information. If you give someone a forecast, you are giving them a specific kind of confidence. You are actively altering their behavior.
It prevents you from seeking real treatment. If I think the expert has predicted that the stock market is safe, I don't bother buying insurance. I don't build a bucker. I leverage myself to the hilt because, hey, Cato said 2012 is going to be a boom year.
Precisely. You stop looking for robustness, which is the real cure, and you rely on the forecast, which is the snake oil.
Now, I want to challenge this a little bit because it sounds like we are just saying people are gullible. But is it really that simple? Do we just blindly follow numbers?
It is not about being gullible. It is about how our brains are literally wired. And this isn't just speculation. The text mentions Danny Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner, the guy who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow.
Absolute legend in psychology.
He showed the author evidence that is frankly terrifying. It suggests that if I give you a number, any number, it changes your brain chemistry regarding risk.
Hold on. When you say any number, you mean a relevant number, right? Like a past stock price or a historical average?
Yeah, I mean a completely random number. I could pull a number out of a hat. I could roll dice right in front of you. If I give you a random number and say it is a forecast, your anxiety levels mathematically drop.
Even if I explicitly know it is random, that doesn't make any sense. We are rational adults. If I see you roll dice, I am not going to base my retirement portfolio on it.
You say that, but the psychology says otherwise. It is related to anchoring, but it goes much deeper than that. The number acts as a sedative. It lowers your biological defense mechanisms. You feel safer, so you inevitably take bigger risks.
So the forecast is literally acting like a drug. It numbs the pain of uncertainty.
Exactly. We are terrified of the unknown. The random number fills that void. It gives us something to hold on to, and that quiet anxiety reduction is dangerous because it lowers your defenses. The author calls for forecaster hubris proofing.
Forecaster hubris proofing, I really like that.
Think about it. We child-proof our homes because we know kids can get hurt. We put locks on the cabinets and bumpers on the tables. We need to hubris-proof our societies because we know forecasters can get us hurt. We need to build systems that automatically assume the forecast is dead wrong.
So if we stop listening to the Catos of the world, if we completely stop pretending we know that 2014 is going to be a growth year, what do we actually do? Do we just hide under the bed? Do we just hoard canned beans and shotguns?
No, it gave me the beans. But the goal isn't paranoia. The goal is to become robust. And this is where the source material gets really fun and practical. It simplifies life. The text asks us to imagine the lazy way to survive.
I am a very big fan of laziness if it works. Tell me about the lazy way.
The robust person is the one who has built-in redundancy. The analogy used is, imagine you have extra cash in the bank. And not just cash. Imagine you have a basement full of tradable goods.
The text specifically mentions cans of Spam, hummus, and gold bars.
Which is quite the combination. I am not entirely sure what kind of dinner party you are throwing with Spam and hummus, but...
A very weird survivalist dinner party for sure, but I get the point. It is about having a diverse stockpile.
The point is, if you have that stockpile, the cash, the Spam, the gold, do you really need to know exactly what disaster is coming?
No, you don't.
Exactly. It could be a war, it could be a revolution, it could be a recession, it could be, as the text jokingly suggests, the secession of the state of New Jersey.
Which would be a massive tragedy for the pizza industry, but I see what you mean.
If you are robust, the specific cause of the disruption is totally irrelevant. You don't need to predict that there will be an earthquake in March. You just need to be ready for generalized trouble. Compare that to the person who is in heavy debt.
The person in debt is walking a tightrope without a net.
Right. If you are highly leveraged, if you owe money, you have to predict the future with incredibly high accuracy. You need your income to stay perfectly stable. You need interest rates to stay exactly where they are. You need everything to go right. One wobble, one unpredicted event, and you are crushed.
It is interesting because in our modern corporate world, redundancy is almost always seen as inefficient, right? If you have extra cash sitting there, a financial advisor tells you it is lazy money. It should be working for you in the market. If you have extra inventory in a warehouse, a management consultant tells you to move to just-in-time delivery to cut costs.
And that hyper-efficiency is exactly what makes you fragile. It removes all the buffer. It forces you to rely entirely on the prediction that the supply chain will never break. The robust worldview says, keep the cash, keep the Spam, be deliberately inefficient so you can be independent of the forecast.
So redundancy is just the price you pay for sleeping soundly at night?
Yes. Redundancy is a non-predictive mode of action. It shifts your focus completely from what will happen next Tuesday to, am I built to survive whatever happens next Tuesday?
Okay, so we have this clear goal. Be robust. But how do we actually execute that? The author gives us 3 points of refinement, sort of practical roadmap to this non-predictive life.
Right. Point number 1 is smell the fragility.
Smell it. Like literally sniff it out.
It is a metaphor, obviously, but a very useful one. The core idea is that detecting fragility in a system is infinitely easier than predicting a specific future event.
Give me a concrete example. How do I go about smelling fragility?
Think about a car. I might not be able to predict exactly when or where that car is going to crash. I can't predict if a deer will jump out of the woods or if there will be an invisible patch of black ice on a specific bridge at a specific time. Predicting the accident itself is impossible.
Okay.
But if I look at the car and I see the brake lines are completely rusted through, the tires are entirely bald, and the steering wheel is loose.
You can smell the fragility.
Exactly. You know it is fragile. You know that if something happens, literally anything, it will not end well. You don't need to predict the crash to know the underlying system is defective.
So the mission isn't guess the future. The mission is find the rust.
Correct. The central principle here is to minimize harm and maximize gain from forecasting errors. We want to put ourselves in a position where if the experts are completely wrong, we don't fall apart, or even better, we actually benefit from the chaos.
Which leads us directly to point number 2. Don't change the world.
This is a massive jab at what the author calls the Soviet Harvard utopists.
I just love that label. It conjures up a very specific image of people sitting in ivory towers thinking they can arrange human society like pieces on a chessboard.
He calls them the fragilistas.
Yeah.
These are the policymakers and academics who try to alter reality to fit their neat little models. They think, well, my economic model says people should behave rationally at all times, so let's build a banking system that requires them to be rational.
And when people inevitably aren't rational,
The entire system blows up.
and then the fragilistas blame the people. They say, you guys weren't rational enough for my model. If you just acted like Homo economicus, this would have worked perfectly.
Exactly. The robust approach is the exact opposite. It's just do not try to change the world or human nature. It is too complex. Make things robust to defects. Accept that things will go horribly wrong. Accept that people will be deeply irrational. Build a system that makes lemonade out of lemons.
And that brings us to point 3, which is all about history.
Yes. The text says history is essentially in the business of making lemonade out of lemons. Anti-fragility, which is getting stronger from stress, is how things move forward under the mother of all stressors, which is simply time.
Time, just the passage of time.
Time ruthlessly destroys the fragile. If something has survived for a very long time, like a major religion or a classic book or a deeply ingrained cultural practice, it is highly likely to be robust or anti-fragile. It is empirically proven it can handle shocks. The new, shiny, highly optimized model hasn't proven a single thing yet.
This connects to something really profound in the text about where we place our blame. We talked about the car crash earlier. The author says when a massive disaster happens, a tsunami, a financial crisis, a sudden riot, we need to stop saying, why didn't we see this coming?
Right. We always blame the failure of prediction. People say, oh, the intelligence agencies failed to predict the attack, or the economists failed to predict the housing bubble.
But the author says that is completely the wrong target.
It is. The real failure is a failure to understand fragility. The question shouldn't be, why didn't we predict the tsunami? It should be, why on earth did we build a nuclear plant so close to the ocean without an adequate seawall?
Why did we build something so fragile to these completely normal types of events?
Exactly. Not seeing a tsunami coming is excusable. We aren't gods. We can't see the future. But building a hyper-fragile system right next to the ocean, that is not excusable. That is pure negligence.
This brings up a really funny but deep section in the source material about human nature, the bad teeth theory.
Oh yeah, the bad teeth. Humans have been the same for thousands of years, plus or minus bad teeth.
It is a wonderful way of cutting through the modern noise. We often like to think we are so much more sophisticated and evolved than our ancestors. But biologically, emotionally, socially, we are exactly the same. We have the same base drives, the exact same greed, the same panic.
The author really goes after the moralizers here. He describes them as looking like they are in a permanent state of gastrointestinal distress.
Which is a very polite and funny way of saying they look constipated with their own self-righteousness.
He is saying that trying to eliminate human greed or fundamental defects through lectures is a total fool's errand. We have been trying to preach the greed out of humanity for thousands of years. It simply does not work.
So the practical solution, the robust solution, is not to try to create a new, perfect man who isn't greedy. It is to build a system that is fundamentally greed-proof.
Or even better, a system that actively benefits from that greed. Capitalism, when it actually works well, tries to channel that selfish greed into broad production. But the vital key is to ensure that when someone is greedy and they fail, they don't take the entire global system down with them. You don't rely on humans to be angels. You rely on the system to handle their inevitable imperfection.
Let's look at some real-world examples the text gives here, because I think this really helps ground the abstract ideas. We have the nuclear industry and the Swedish economic model. Let's start with nuclear.
This is a fascinating pivot in engineering philosophy. Post-Fukushima, after the disaster in Japan, some very smart people in the nuclear industry started to finally get it.
What did they actually change?
Well, the old way was entirely probabilistic. They would sit around with supercomputers and calculate the exact probability of a core meltdown. They would say, oh, it is a 1 in a million year event. It is a 6 sigma anomaly. They focused all their energy on predicting the likelihood of the disaster.
Which is essentially betting against the Black Swan.
Right. And as we know, 1 in a million happens eventually. The new way, the robust way, completely abandons prediction and focuses entirely on exposure to failure.
Meaning what in practice?
Meaning they stopped asking what are the exact odds it blows up, and they started asking what actually happens to us if it blows up.
That is a huge fundamental shift.
It leads to a totally different kind of engineering. Instead of building one massive centralized plant that relies on absolutely perfect safety protocols forever, you build small microreactors. You bury them deep underground. You add massive layers of physical protection.
So if one of them fails?
It fails.
Yeah.
It is costly. It is a localized mess.
Yeah.
But it is not an existential threat to the entire nation. It doesn't poison the whole coastline. The prediction of failure becomes irrelevant because the consequence of failure is strictly contained.
I see. It is moving from, I promise you this will never crash, to this creates a very small dent if it crashes.
Exactly. And then we have the Swedish example on the economic side.
The Swedes, what do they do differently?
Back in 1991, Sweden had some very serious budget troubles, a real crisis. After that, they shifted their entire government philosophy to total fiscal responsibility.
Which sounds a lot like having cash in the bank.
It is exactly that. They decided they wanted to be completely independent of economic forecasts. If you run a balanced budget, or even better, a surplus, you simply don't need to know if GDP will grow by 2% or 3% next year. You are perfectly fine either way.
And the text says this allowed them to essentially shrug off later crises.
While other countries in Europe were panicking because their deficits were exploding during downturns, Sweden was just fine. They weren't leveraged. They weren't fragile to the prediction being wrong.
It seems so obvious when you say it out loud, yet everyone, governments, companies, everyday individuals, we all seem to rush blindly toward fragility. We leverage ourselves to the absolute hilt to get that tiny extra bit of growth, assuming the future will be just perfect.
Because the fourth quadrant is deeply seductive.
Ah, the fourth quadrant. We are getting into the really deep theory now. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we talk about turkeys, cats, and washing machines.
The domains of knowledge. This is absolutely crucial for understanding where you can trust science and where you absolutely cannot.
Okay, lay it out for us. The turkey problem. This is a classic concept from the author.
It is. The turkey problem is a parable. Imagine you are a turkey. You are born on a very nice farm. Every single day, the farmer comes out to the yard. He is smiling. He is carrying a big bucket of corn. He feeds you.
Life is good.
Life is highly predictable. The farmer protects you from foxes. He gives you warm shelter. He gives you food. As a scientist turkey, you start rigorously collecting data. Day 1, fed and friendly. Day 100, fed and friendly. Day 500, fed and friendly.
The turkey has a huge amount of data, 1,000 solid data points. Statistically speaking, the turkey can prove with extremely high confidence that the farmer loves him.
Lots of statistical significance. The confidence level is through the roof. And then, just a few days before Thanksgiving, the farmer comes out and something very, very different happens.
The Black Swan event. For the turkey, at least.
For the turkey, it is a catastrophic, completely unpredicted black swan. For the butcher, it is just Tuesday. But the vital point is, the turkey's past data did not predict its future. In fact, the perceived safety of the past was actively misleading. The fact that he was fed every single day was actually mounting evidence that he was being fattened up for the slaughter.
But the turkey was just using the wrong math. He was living in the wrong domain.
Exactly. The author separates the world into two distinct domains. Domain 1 is the predictable. The text calls this physical life.
This is where traditional science works perfectly.
Yes, we can put a man on the moon. We can predict the exact trajectory of a comet 500 years from now. We can predict quantum effects in a controlled lab.
If I can on my washing machine, I can predict with near 100% certainty what it will do. It will fill with water, it will spin, it will rinse, and it will stop.
Exactly. That is the washing machine domain. It is mechanical. It strictly follows physical laws. It has known limits. A washing machine cycle isn't going to suddenly last for 10,000 years.
But then there is domain 2. The unpredictable.
The Black Swan domain. This is social life, economics, culture, politics.
Revolutions, budget deficits, stock prices, internet fads.
The cat domain.
I love this analogy so much. The cat versus the washing machine.
You can predict exactly what a washing machine will do when you kick it. It will dent. It might stop working entirely. You can mathematically model the force and the impact. But you cannot predict what a cat will do when you kick it.
Please do not kick cats, listeners, but the metaphor really holds up.
The cat might run away. It might turn and scratch your eyes out. It might just sit there and stare at you. It acts based on incredibly complex feedback loop-driven biological systems. It does not follow a linear equation.
The distinction is so visible. The author says the difference is literally as visible as the difference between a cat and a washing machine. Yet we have these turkeys, these highly paid experts who try to use washing machine math on cat problems.
They try to use basic physics equations to predict the global stock market. They act like the economy is just a simple machine that you can tune with a wrench.
And that misunderstanding is a fourth quadrant.
Right. We need to get a tiny bit technical here because the fourth quadrant sounds like a sci-fi movie, but it is actually a statistical slaughterhouse.
Set the stage for us. What makes this specific quadrant so different from the others?
It is entirely about the impact of the rare event. In the first three quadrants, like your washing machine example, a rare event is just an outlier. It is statistical noise. If you run your washing machine 1,000 times and one weird cycle takes 5 minutes longer, that doesn't change the overall average that much.
Right. One slightly long cycle doesn't mean the machine is fundamentally broken. It just washes out in the average.
But in the fourth quadrant, the rare event is literally everything. It is the winner-take-all dynamic. Let's use a wealth example. Imagine a stadium full of 10,000 regular people. You calculate the average wealth of everyone in that stadium. Let's say it is $50,000.
Okay. Sounds like a normal distribution.
Then Bill Gates walks into the stadium.
The average immediately skyrockets.
The average becomes completely meaningless. Bill Gates represents the fourth quadrant event. He isn't just a slight outlier. His wealth outweighs the entire rest of the dataset combined. In this domain, you simply cannot use standard bell curves. You can't use sigma events. The math that works beautifully for washing machines literally breaks when you apply it to wealth distribution or global pandemics or war.
And yet we have central bank economists using washing machine math to predict Bill Gates-type events.
They naively assume the events are thin-tailed, meaning they assume extreme events are virtually impossible. But in the fourth quadrant, we have fat tails. Extreme events happen far, far more often than the Gaussian bell curve models predict.
And the author says this is where the limit of knowledge is strictly mathematical. It is not just that we don't have enough computing power or enough data yet. It is that we fundamentally cannot know.
The text is actually brutal here. It says no matter how many PhDs with Russian and Indian names you hire.
He really specifies the nationality.
He does. He's implying that hiring the absolute smartest, most elite math whizzes in the world simply does not matter. You cannot predict in the fourth quadrant. The math does not allow it.
And he says this is where we must be deeply skeptical. In the other quadrants, like if I am trying to predict if it will rain tomorrow, being wrong doesn't destroy my life. The errors are inconsequential. But in the fourth quadrant...
Errors destroy you. If you are wrong about the financial system's stability, you lose everything you own. If you are wrong about a novel pandemic, millions of people die.
And the scary part is, the source material says this situation is getting worse. Modernity is actively making the fourth quadrant bigger.
Yes, this is the concept of Extremistan. Modernity drastically increases winner-take-all effects. Success is now planetary, or it is nothing. A virus travels globally in 24 hours because of airplanes. A financial crash hits Tokyo and New York simultaneously because of interconnected trading algorithms.
We are entirely interconnected.
Which means the Black Swans are far more dominant. We are building things, global supply chains, wildly complex financial derivatives that we are less and less capable of actually understanding. Our own sophistication is actually putting us in vastly more danger.
Which leads perfectly to the trap of sophistication. Because when people first heard about the Black Swan idea, the idea that these massive rare events happen, they did something the author completely hated.
They tried to predict the Black Swan.
They missed the entire point of the book.
They really did.
Yeah.
Opportunists and consultants started using chaos theory, complexity theory, fractal geometry, all this incredibly fancy math to try to pinpoint exactly when the next crash would happen.
They said, oh, we have a better model now. We can mathematically model the chaos.
And the author's verdict is beautifully simple. Less is more. Do not build a more complex model. Build a stronger wall.
Move the entire discourse away from prediction and toward fragility.
Don't try to be smarter than the inherent chaos of the universe. Just be physically and financially robust to it.
There is a great little note about Warren Buffett in the text here. It sums up this idea of simplicity versus complexity perfectly.
Yes. Buffett famously says he tries to invest in businesses that are so wonderful that an idiot can run them. Because sooner or later, one will.
That is the absolute essence of robustness.
It really is. If your business requires a once-in-a-generation genius to run it, if it requires perfect, flawless decision-making every single day, it is highly fragile. Because eventually you will have a bad day. You will eventually have an idiot in charge. A robust system survives the idiot.
So we have gone from the red rage in Korea to the medical harm of economic forecasting, to the safety of spam and gold bars, to the fundamental difference between cats and washing machines. What does this all ultimately mean for us?
It means we desperately need to adopt a non-predictive view of the world.
It sounds like a massive relief, honestly, to just stop trying to guess all the time.
It is incredibly liberating. The goal is to move yourself out of the fourth quadrant, that highly dangerous, unpredictable zone, and firmly into the third quadrant.
The third quadrant being?
The zone where you are structurally robust, where extreme randomness might happen, but it doesn't kill you, where you might even find yourself benefiting from the volatility.
And this sets us up beautifully for what the author calls Book 3 in his larger philosophical work. We aren't covering it today, but just to tease where this whole philosophy goes next.
It goes straight to Seneca, the ancient Stoic philosopher.
Stoicism seems like the absolute perfect philosophical partner for this mindset.
Absolutely. And it leads directly to the barbell strategy,
Bargo.
mixing extreme safety with extreme risk and completely avoiding the fragile middle ground. But that is definitely a deep dive for another day.
Indeed it is. For now, we are left with the immediate, practical challenge.
The challenge of looking at our own lives purely through this lens of fragility.
So here is our final thought for you, the listener, right now. We really want you to take a moment today and think about your own career, your own financial portfolio, your own overarching life strategy.
Ask yourself, where are you relying on a forecast to be safe?
Where are you acting exactly like the turkey? Where are you silently assuming that just because things have been steady for 3 years, they will be steady forever?
Are you in debt to a future prediction? Does your lifestyle require your income to go up by 10% next year? Because that is a forecast.
But we challenge you to identify one area, just one, where you can buy some insurance, metaphorically speaking. Where can you stockpile your personal equivalent of spam and novels?
Maybe it is building a 6-month emergency fund. Maybe it is learning a second completely unrelated skill so you aren't totally dependent on one fragile industry. Maybe it's just clearing your calendar so you have actual slack in your daily system.
Build that buffer so that when the suit and tie hotshot on TV says the world is definitively ending or the world is definitely booming, you simply do not care.
You don't need to listen to the weatherman when you live in a concrete bunker.
Don't try to be smarter than the Black Swan. Just be harder to break. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Stay robust.